Hey everyone, welcome to the Church Planting Podcast. I'm Greg Nettle and I serve as president of Stadia Church Planting, where we believe that every child on the planet needs to be part of a thriving, growing, multiplying church. We're all about the next generation. I'm really excited about today's guest on this episode of the Church Planting Podcast. My wife, Julie Nettle, is going to be joining me, and we're going to be talking about what it's like to serve in ministry together, to be married and on staff together. And for Julie and I, it was lots of years together and, from very small launch to, lots of campuses and much larger church. So we've kind of experienced the whole journey together. Thanks for joining us, and we'll jump right in here in just a moment. So this is really fun for me to be doing this episode of the Church Planting Podcast with my wife, Julie. Welcome, Julie, to the Church Planting Podcast.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Hey, this is an interesting topic for us to discuss together. The idea of a husband and wife, or a wife and husband, however you want to look at it, sharing in ministry together, working in the same local church, the same organization. And, some churches really frown on it. In fact, I have a friend who the church wouldn't allow the spouse to come on staff. They said it just too many risks. But for us, Julie, I think we would both agree that sharing in local ministry together, all those years that we did it in a very intense way, high-level leadership positions, was one of the most joyous periods of our married life.
Yes. It was very rewarding, actually.
And actually miss it.
I do miss it.
Yeah,
working with you.
Okay, let's talk about so River Tree. I was single, first of all, when I went to
and
yeah.
People tried to fix you up.
Yeah, people were trying to fix me up. So you and I started dating, blind date, and then we ended up getting married about 2 years into the relationship. How did it start with you for getting involved in ministry at all?
Well, you were pretty much directing everything on the weekends and would continually ask me to be in dramas on Saturday nights. He would hand me a script and he's like, here, memorize this for tomorrow. So literally I went to my friend Pam Richardson and begged her to help me. And I'm like, look, I can carry it soon. Can I audition for the vocal team?
Yeah, it was out of desperation to get out of anything that I was involved in.
And that was my first step into, being involved in a praise team and serving in that way. Before that, I did some communion prep and stuff like that.
Yeah. And so you did some things that in many cases, a spouse, they would go, yeah, that's what a spouse should be doing, right?
Sure,
It's but then you move into the worship ministry department, and we discover that you are unbelievably gifted as a vocalist, and you have incredible team building skills, mentoring skills. And so where did your ministry kind of lead then?
Actually, I just felt God calling me in that direction, I guess. I loved leading worship, and one of our directors stepped down, and then the elders had asked me to take over on a trial basis. And so from then on, I just developed, watched other people, learned a lot from previous worship directors, and just kind of, took over that way. And it totally was where I was supposed to be.
Yeah. So this is important. So even though it wasn't, we did get the elders involved. Normally, I would have made all the staffing decisions, but in this case, because it was my spouse, the elders were brought into it and involved. And I love that you remember that the elders actually said, Julie, we want you to be our worship director.
Yes.
Because it showed the unity of the leadership. So that was not a battle we had to fight.
No.
Once that was implemented. And then it became pretty normative.
Right.
To have spouses on our staff because, why should a spouse be, alienated or not used in a church ministry with massive gifting simply because they're married to another staff? That's our life. Now, there are problems. We've had challenges over, the 30 years of ministry together, but along the way, the benefits have been so much higher. Okay, so talk about it though. So then River Tree's growing. You're with the church really from it. I think you started when we got married. The church had grown to about 400 people, and then by the time we finished up there, 25 years later, before moving to Stadia, the church was actually about 3,500 people in attendance with 4 campuses. Yeah. And your role in that time really did evolve.
Yes. Well, the larger the church became, the more I was asked to do and lead. So, where I was the worship director of the main campus, then when we added campuses, it was my job to find the worship leader of the worship pastor of that particular campus, and to coach them and help them lead their teams, all while I was still, pastoring and shepherding the team at the main campus.
And yeah, I mean, you're overseeing 4 campuses of worship programming as well as leading the original campus. So what my point is, this is a major partnership in ministry. Now, you and I were just talking. I'm reading just a fascinating book right now with our team at Stadia called Just Work. And it's about eliminating bullying and, bias and inequity in the workplace. It's really, really good. But you and I were listening to it because it was talking about compensation and how in so many organizations, women specifically, people of color often are not compensated the same as white males. And at Stadia, we work really, really hard for that not to be the case. But we were talking about it clear back in those days at River Tree. And as good as River Tree was, and I own this because I was the leader at the time.
Sure.
You were not compensated well.
No, not for that kind of carrying that kind of weight and mantle. Leadership. Yeah.
Okay. And this is important because as we talk to spouses in ministry, so often it's like, oh yeah, the spouse can work for the church because we can get them for free or for 50. Yep, 2 for 1. You've actually heard that.
That's what they said to me.
Yeah.
To us. I don't know if you heard it, but
yeah. So, and you want to serve together. We're all about the kingdom. And so you're like, yeah, okay, well, the other spouse is making maybe the primary salary.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
And I get that in church work. But at the same time, as the church did grow, I regret deeply not being a champion for you. To say, hey, this position actually, if we had to go out and hire someone today, would pay 3 times the amount that we're paying Julie right now. So sorry for that, honey.
That's okay. I mean, I think one of the fears of the elders would be that there would be some nepotism, but I have to give you credit because there was Greg never played favorites with me. Never. I was treated as
You're a team member, just like all of us.
Yeah.
Well, and let's talk about structure, because you were never a direct report to me.
No, thank God for Pastor Al D'Angelo. Kudos to him. Yeah, the elders in their wisdom knew that we would need a buffer person, a person to play that role, and he did a great job, and he was my champion.
Yeah, so Al D'Angelo reported to me. You reported to Al D'Angelo. And boy, we made it a high priority not to triangulate in any way.
Right.
I mean,
even you're successful at that.
We'd actually have to say to each other, look, you have to talk to Al about that. I would have to say that to you on numerous occasions.
You were better at it than I was.
Well, it's, if you can go straight to the team leader at that point, right? It's, I understand that, but it was really critical in the way we were structured because then, back to the salary thing, we weren't compensating women appropriately at River Tree. But Al was the one who would fight for your salary. That was not me. And that made that's a big difference in a healthy structure if it's actually working correctly.
Yeah.
Time off, anything like that. You wouldn't be coming to me for that. You'd be going to your team leader. Let's talk about some of the joys of things that worked really well for us in ministry together.
I think both as creative people, the worship director usually works very closely with the weekend pastor, and we could, we put some really good God experiences together because we used our giftedness and kind of worked off of each other. And I kind of became, because because I'm married to you, it was very intuitive for me to know, okay, what's Greg gonna do here? And it made it fun to plan that kind of stuff together. I do miss that.
Yeah, no, that was an absolute joy. I have to agree. I think one of my other favorite things was just that you were always in part of the team.
Yeah.
And so we were sharing life together, because so much of life in church planting and growth of a church is involved with that team. And so, at the staff Christmas parties, for instance, you're there as a team member and a contributing member. And not that a non-staff wife isn't a contributing member by any means,
Right.
but there is a deeper level, I think we found.
Yeah.
Because you had your team members there too.
Right.
And we used to host stuff at our house for your teams.
Hosted stuff. Yeah, we did. Mm-hmm. Like they were usually in the summer.
Yeah.
The worship parties. Yeah. But there was great joy in serving with you.
Yeah.
And, helping Jesus change lives. Like that's such a privilege to be a part of it, to see that week in and week out. It was fantastic. It was amazing.
Well, the other thing I think, as I look back, our rhythms were the same. So often, so when we're working together in ministry, the rhythm of, hey, we're gearing up for a gathering, and then we're down. And then, at Christmas, we're gearing up for a big holiday season, and then or Easter, we're gearing up. But let's talk about the holidays, because as a married couple in ministry together, there were very deep challenges as well.
Well, before we go to that, I just wanted to say, thank God for the elders understanding the rhythms of the church and knowing that as like the main people on stage, we needed the same breaks. We needed the same vacations. And they knew that. And that was.
They were generous with that. So we took a family study break together every summer for 4 weeks.
Yeah.
And that was a time that was focused solely on our children.
Mm-hmm.
And
getting rest.
Yeah. And And when we were there was a period where we were doing 5 services, 5 gatherings a weekend, 2 on Saturday night, 3 on Sunday morning before we went to multi-site.
Week after.
And for several years. And we discovered that during that time, we'd not been taking a Sabbath for like 3 years.
Yeah, it was rough.
And so the elders, again, we went to see Pete Richardson, I think it was, for life coaching. Colorado.
Yeah, Colorado.
Yep. And Pete said, you need to go back and talk to the elders about having Mondays and Tuesdays as your days off.
Yes, because we served pretty much all day Saturday, because you're
with
Saturday and Sunday.
And so kind of being aware of those rhythms as a married couple and the toll it's taking on you and your family.
The ministries too, because we used to have rehearsal on every Monday.
Yeah.
And then, with Memorial Day and Labor Day, and then it became, one of our days off. So a lot of things changed for the church.
Okay, so let's go back and just talk about the holidays and how we navigated that and some of the challenges.
I came from a traditional Catholic background,
right.
So Sundays were church days and stuff, and so we didn't really get to have that with our kids. We would leave early in the morning, and I'd have a sitter come over, and so what it really, really troubled me was on holidays, especially Easter Sunday, because we would have to hide the Easter baskets on like Saturday afternoon. And it just didn't sit right with me. And so then we started doing it dark 30 on Easter Sunday, which was never really great, because we're out there like hiding baskets in the yard. That was challenging,
Christmas, we
were just so exhausted.
Because Christmas Eve was one of our biggest outreach gatherings of the year. I mean, it became fairly brutal because there were years where we were doing 10 and 11 Christmas Eve services over 4 days heading into Christmas. And then we'd wake up and we'd be absolutely exhausted on Christmas morning. And so I guess what I would say, go in with your eyes wide open.
Yeah.
That there are going to be prices there's a price that you pay as well when you're in ministry together. But let's talk about, our children. So we didn't have children when we started in ministry together.
Right.
Then we had Tabs as our biological daughter, and then we adopted Elijah.
Mm-hmm.
And let's talk about some of the things that we try to do with our kids to really make it a good experience for them rather than negative.
Well, we always let them just, this may not be good for some people here, but we just let them run around.
We did,
the church, and let it be their, kind of playground where they could have fun with their kids. They were very involved in like Energy, the youth group there. It was just always kind of like,
we were never the ones that said, hey, you have to sit in the front row here and be quiet. No, we're not talking about when the gatherings are going on, okay? This is like
Although there was that moment Elijah like stormed the stage.
Yeah, he did. I was talking about Elijah in the Bible, and he ran up and said, "Daddy, I'm Elijah."
It was adorable.
Yeah, but but celebrating that rather than it's all good.
Right.
Never talking about our children from the platform without their permission.
Right.
Ever, ever, ever. That was really important. Never telling stories about each other from the platform without one another's permission.
Right.
So important.
Tabs she was involved in different things like some dramas and stuff like that, and we would always ask her first. And Elijah, I don't think he was ever.
No, he was too young. Yeah. And, but we were, before the services began, after the gatherings were over, I mean, running up and down the bleachers, we're like, go have fun, go stop walking or whatever you want to do.
And then they'd go into their classrooms.
Don't dive in the baptistry. There were some limits. But,
right.
But they did. It was not a negative. For them to go to church on the weekend, however your modality of church is, whatever that experience is, we wanted it to be an enjoyable experience for our children.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I think they loved it. And so much so that when you resigned from River Tree, we underestimated the impact it would have on Tabitha for sure.
Yeah.
Because she had grown up in that.
It was
she was
a lot of her identity was wrapped
baby.
up in that.
Yeah, she was born in 98. And so.
Yeah, had been there with us her whole life. Okay, let's come back to just us sharing ministry together. And
wait, I wanted to tell one more funny story.
Okay, yeah.
So the kids, feeling like they were at home there and everything. Your dad used to have this little cart that he would wheel around. Like usually it was, it would have like the
hand sanitizer and stuff like he was putting it out. My dad and mom attended our church, part of the church.
So several times I would find Elijah sitting on top of that.
Yeah.
And him carting him through the hallways, with like, a couple thousand people there. And he would go into the kitchen and get Elijah's. And I was like, okay, we're putting a stop to this because he's not, you can't just give any random kid a snack. Why should my son get a snack from the kitchen?
Okay, I disagree with that. I think if your kid wants a snack, get him a snack. If he's going to be there for 5 hours being wheeled around on a cart, indulge them. That's my philosophy.
All right, so back to you.
Okay, so where were we? We were talking about, so there are some dark sides to ministering together as well. So here's what I would say. The wounds, we're all going to get wounded, right? Mm-hmm. Church planting is really hard. Growing a church is really difficult.
And we're human beings. It's led by humans.
Yeah. And so whereas if it were just me or just Julie in ministry, where that wound, maybe I was wounded at work, I wouldn't necessarily bring that home and deal with it at dinner. But when you're married and you've both experienced that wound, so I don't know if that's good or bad. I mean, it's a shared wounding sometimes.
Sometimes your wound absolutely became my wound, right? Because I would be defensive and be like, why would they say that, or why would and then I would really have to work through not have.
So this was an important thing we learned about communication was if I ever shared something with Julie or Julie shared something with me, okay, and maybe it was a challenge with a staff member or someone in the church. And then 2 weeks later, let's say, it's completely resolved, completely healed. Person came, asked forgiveness. I went and asked forgiveness, whatever. Misunderstanding, doesn't matter. Boy, it was so important for me then to sit down with Julie and say, hey, wanted to let you know that situation that was so upsetting, that person and I were together today and it was completely resolved. Right. Otherwise, you're carrying around that mess of...
We didn't know that, though, at first.
No, I know.
You came upon that, like, nugget and then shared it with me. I'm like, oh, wow, that would be helpful.
Yeah, no kidding, because you carry it around. Sure. But the challenge is, when you're together, the other thing is really making sure they do not bleed into your family.
Oh, yes, the negative experiences.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
So while Julie and I were and are completely transparent with one another about what goes on in our lives and in our ministries, we did protect our children from all of that in church. They weren't old enough to understand it or handle it. And the vast, vast, vast majority of it never had anything to do with them.
No.
And so, but you do carry a lot. So, you would have a team member come to you and they're struggling with pornography. And then you maybe share that with me. And Julie still has to lead through that team process of dealing with that appropriately. But together we did carry the burden and prayed for that person and walked through that together.
Right.
So a lot more shared experiences when you're working together like that, and coming out of that. So, okay. So Julie, as we kind of finish up here, if we got lots of church planting women out there. Stadia believes in empowering women in ministry to the full extent of their giftedness. What would you say to them, as they're getting involved, thinking about it even?
The first thing that comes to mind is this old Amy Grant song that says, all I ever has to be is me, or who you made me to be.
Yeah.
All I ever have to be is who you made me to be. And I would just encourage all the girls out there just to not put expectations on yourself, and don't let other people put expectations on you, and just, follow God's lead. Protect your marriage, protect your children, and enjoy what God's doing in your life.
Yeah, and I think
I didn't grow up to be a pastor's wife. Like, I didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
But I knew that when I married you, I wanted to be the kind of person that loved. I said to myself, if this marriage is going to work, I'm going to have to love the church. And I made that decision right off the bat. And it was one of the biggest blessings of my life to be a part of.
And men, I guess what I would say to you when it comes to women, and in particular your spouses, I think when the Apostle Paul writes and he talks about how we interact as husbands and wives, the whole idea of it is that as husbands, our job is to lift our wives up, to serve them in such a way that they become all that they were meant to be, as you said, by God. And that then the wives lift the husbands up, and the husbands, so it's this never-ending spiral of beauty of how we lift each other up to full potential of who Christ has created us to be. Julie, thanks for being on the Church Planting Podcast.
You're very welcome.
I love you.
I love you too.